Pressure is mounting on Google, with the US government taking a bold stance against its profitable ad tech division. Starting today, a trial will explore accusations from the Department of Justice that Google, through its parent company Alphabet, operates a monopoly in the digital advertising market while earning over $200 billion last year alone. Now, the core of the lawsuit, filed in 2023 by the Department of Justice and a coalition of United States, says that it centers around allegations that Google controls too much of the digital ad space, making it difficult for competitors to grow. The Department of Justice claims that Google has been leveraging its massive market power to prevent rivals from developing their own ad technologies, ultimately limiting the choice for advertisers and consumers. Google's response to the lawsuit is that the digital ad space is highly competitive, with major players like Apple, Amazon, and TikTok are already thriving in the market. Google has therefore pointed out that its advertising technologies are successful because they work well, not because they're forced onto the consumers. But Google's woes are not just limited to the United States. The European Court of Justice has also ruled that Google must pay a 2.4 billion euro fine handed down for abusing the market dominance of its shopping comparison service. Now, the EU's case against Google started with a company called Foundem, which filed its complaint way back in 2009 against the tech company, and Foundem claimed that Google made its own shopping recommendations appear more prominent than its rivals, such as Foundem, in search results. 7 years ago, in 2017, the Commission agreed that the tech giant did indeed monopolize online price comparison by preventing others from getting a foothold in the market. That decision has now been upheld despite an appeal being filed by Google against a 2017 order. Now, as a result, Google has amassed fines of a total of 8.2 billion euros from the European Commission itself so far. There are three fines. First was in 2017, the 2.4 billion euro fine, which has been upheld today. Then in 2018, a 4.3 billion euro fine was given to Google over claims that it used Android software to unfairly promote its own apps. And then in 2019, a third fine was imposed on Google of 1.5 billion euros for blocking adverts from rival search engines here. So I am now being joined by a very special guest indeed, Leah Zuber, spokesperson for competition matters of the European Commission. Hi, Leah. Thank you for speaking to me. Now, we really appreciate you taking out time to speak to us. Today, the highest judicial authority in the European Union, the Court of Justice, has ruled on this 15-year-old case, ruling that Google must pay its 2.4 billion euro fine. What do you feel will be the ramifications of the verdict of this case of Google Shopping versus Foundem?
Yes, thank you. Hello, and thanks so much for inviting me. So indeed, we are quite happy with today's day and the judgment. Of course, it's really. We regard the Google Shopping case as a landmark case in this respect, because it was really one of the first significant antitrust cases that was brought by a competition agency against a major digital company. I must, let's say, remind you a little bit that at the time when we brought the case, the atmosphere was more like we need to leave digital companies to operate in peace. This is, of course, driving positive change and growth, which is, of course, all still very valid. But of course, there also needs to be responsibility. And once we launched this case for market dominance in comparison shopping services, we were kind of the first ones that, let's say, challenged this notion. I would also just like to remind you that this is also a case which was one of the cases that inspired our regulation that we now have in place, the Digital Markets Act, which actually has self-preferencing listed as one of the behaviors which is prohibited for gatekeepers, and Google is one of the gatekeeping company as well as Apple, Amazon, etc., etc. So yes, I think, I mean, the ramifications will be that it kind of inspires us to move forward with all the actions that we were doing. But I think it's important to recall also kind of
Indeed.
where it came from.
Now, Leah, the case with the European Union, which we've got closure to today, is just one of a litany of legal woes which Google is embroiled with, because it's not just the European Union. There are cases in the United States, to the United Kingdom, even back in India. As we speak, there has been a second antitrust trial that has started in the United States after the Department of Justice has accused Google of unfair market monopoly. Do you feel that today's verdict from the European Court of Justice will also have ramifications on this global pushback against Google's operations?
This is a little bit difficult for me to comment on. Of course, we are very aware of what our colleagues around the
I
world
understand.
are doing, and we are in contact with them. Again, for us, it's a signal to as you say, we also have open cases. We have an AdTech case opened against Google, where we have sent what we call a statement of objections in June 2023. So yes, we will see where this leads us.
Okay, but if one had to play devil's advocate here, can Google be justified in claiming that since A, it provides a service, even if it's not a monopoly, it's free to prioritize those who are ready to pay for it, and also it's claimed that its services are doing well because they're popular, they're being lapped up by the market, not because they have a monopoly.
Yes, well, it's as I said, there are many cases that we are talking about here. I mean, here in the Google shopping case, it was about prioritization between the different companies that were showing comparison search sites, and so here Google was preferencing its own comparison tool, which was the Google shopping one. So they were all for free in this case. I mean, here I think what is important is the principle of non-discrimination. So of course you need to see whether the situations are similar. So if they are all for free, then you need to treat them similarly. If we are in a scenario where some services would be paid for and others not paid for, this could potentially, I'm just saying in a hypothetical scenario, warrant a differentiation of treatment. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you were mentioning the popularity of Google services. Of course, this is completely justified. I think we were never putting that into question. But I think our goal is to make markets fair, is also to make them contestable, is to ensure that there are no anti-competitive practices. And then once you create such a context, of course, then it's for the best service to win in a way, to win the most customers.
Okay. Leah, if I could ask your opinion on the latest controversy that's come out around Google's decision to give AI overviews in search pages, which means that if I type something on Google's website, I don't deal with the web pages themselves, I deal with an AI prompt summing up what these web pages say. As a result, there's no citation, there's less traffic on these websites. Do you think it's a fair practice?
I'm afraid I have to disappoint you. I won't be able to say yes or no. I mean,
I
we
understand completely.
currently. Yes, currently in the European Commission, we do not have a case opened, so we do not have an active investigation opened against a particular company, neither
Okay.
Google, when it comes to these practices. But we are following really everything that is AI related, which, as you
Okay.
know, has many
Maybe, Leah,
angles.
we'll just leave you with the final question then. Okay. If you have to go back to the ramifications of today's verdict from the European Court of Justice, Leah, do you feel this perhaps to be a big vindication, because what we are facing probably is the biggest threat by those who defend the principles and the need for net neutrality?
I must say I don't really see a clear link with net neutrality. I guess you mean kind of
Okay.
neutrality of search results in a
Like
way.
essentially everything on the internet should remain equally accessible. But whereas what Google's doing is prioritizing some web pages and some traffic over others.
Indeed, it should definitely not. So again, this case was really about self-preferencing, so about Google preferencing
Yeah.
their own service. So indeed, yes, these practices should not exist anymore.
All right. Leah Zuber, thank you so much for speaking to me now. Appreciate you taking your time out and giving us the view from the European Union. We'll now also go across to my other esteemed guest joining me, Mr. Pawan Dogal, eminent cyber expert, someone who understands cybersecurity and cyberspace in India and a preeminent scholar in this field. Mr. Dogal, thank you for speaking to me now. Apologies for keeping you waiting while I was speaking to Leah. We have had two important developments for Google today. One is the second antitrust case that's begun in the United States, and one, the appeal in the European Union, which has been dismissed. And as a result, Google has been, the decision to fine Google 2.4 billion euros has been upheld by the European Court of Justice. Do you feel that this is perhaps the first in a series of pushback against dominance of big tech companies like Google, who have sought to monopolize the market, given the fact that they are probably the biggest and the only players in this field?
Clearly, this is not the first, but clearly one of the most significant pushbacks. Actually, when I look at it, I like to see world as pre-COVID and post-COVID. Why? Because post-COVID, the digital dominance got even more pronounced because of the growing reliance on the digital format. Also, in the post-COVID era, we have already entered into the new cyber world order. And this kind of a cyber world order, governments and regulators are becoming very powerful, and they are increasingly looking at violations of anti-competition laws with a microscopic lens. So that's why when an American judge holds against Google last month, when a complaint against Google gets initiated in the Competition Commission of India a couple of weeks back, and when now the UK regulator actually holds a primary finding interim against Google, and now Google losing this particular appeal. These are all distinctive signs to say that there's a bigger problem at the hand at Google. Well, Google has long lived under the benefits of its dominant position. But now with these change ground realities, it will have to readjust its approaches. Why? Because the pushback will continue to keep on happening, not just in these jurisdictions, but in a variety of other distinctive jurisdictions. Why? Because post-COVID, every sovereign government wants that there should be a level playing field so that the digital players of that particular jurisdiction also are able to get a piece of the pie that's existing of the digital market. So I think it's a distinctive pushback, and it will be a good idea for Google to go ahead and revisit its existing scenarios. Yes, legal options are open to Google, and Google will want to keep on exhausting them. But ultimately, as a backup plan, it should also come up with something which is far more prudent, far more proactive, and far more topical, keeping in mind the changing ground realities of today's digital age.
But Mr. Dugal, how realistic are these hopes for a pushback against big tech dominance? Because at the end of the day, Google can easily turn around and say, it's my playground, it's my rules. At the end of the day, if I have a monopoly, that is because A, I'm the best and probably the biggest player in the market, and people are wanting my services, so why shouldn't I set the rules?
Well, you have examples like China, where Google has been shown the door and not allowed to operate in China. Yes. Why? Because Google chose not to go ahead and comply with the Chinese laws. So similarly, countries across the world are saying, you may be the most dominant player, no problem. So long as your services are available on computers and communication devices located in my jurisdiction, my law will prevail. And my anti-competition laws will have to be complied with. So Google will have to go ahead and change its courses very quickly, midway. Why? Because Google has to realize it's actually riding a running tiger. It'll have to go and calibrate its strategies in this particular regard. So let's not underestimate the power of sovereign governments to say, hold on, you may be the most dominant player, but we don't require you. Why? Because we want you to comply with our laws. We don't want our homegrown digital companies to be relegated to the sidelines primarily because of your dominance. And ultimately, what are countries saying? We are only saying, let's come up with a level playing field. And there should be nothing wrong to go ahead. Yes, Google has been a first mover, has got massive advantage as the first mover, but now the changed times it'll have to change its strategies. Otherwise, these kinds of challenges will continue to keep on arising.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dugal, for joining us with your views and your expert opinions as always. That concludes this debate.